Hello and welcome to the Ink and Echo podcast, where we're never not wearing cowboy boots while we record. It's very important to the audio fidelity of a podcast program that Andy and I both be wearing boots.
We've both been to Farmer Bob's, Farmer Bill.
It's one of those brothers.
The
Boot Barn
Billy
Extravaganza.
The BBE.
Sometimes Andy just wears boxers and boots, and that's it. Or sometimes not even boxers. I mean, maybe a robe. Anyway, Andy, who in the hell is on our show today?
This is this episode 28 is with Mr. Devin Shelton of Emery fame. So if you were into screamo emo, between 2005 and 8 or whatever, you probably heard Emery.
Or even to this day.
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah.
And he's part of the tangentially related to the Bad Christian podcast people. He runs their clothing thing, BC Supply. He has his own solo album. He's got a voice like butter. And he's just the nicest guy you'll ever hear talk on our podcast.
This episode could probably be referred to as kind of a Bad Christian circle jerk, maybe.
No.
I'd say that in a good way, I guess, but it's like we
can't
reference
use
it
that
quite
word
a bit.
in a good. Well, how can you not?
Is it an echo chamber? That's the other one.
Those are bad things. That word
negative connotations.
Negative connotations.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bad Christian Podcast. Just kidding. I don't know.
What's the good version of a circle jerk? It's got to be like
a back padding session.
I was gonna say that. Is there a name for that? Like you're in a circle and you're scratching each other's backs? Is there a word?
Not
a circle scratch. A circle.
Like a DJ's on a.
If I had a sound effect queued up, that would be really good. But just to
Andy, I want
that, I guess. What do you want to know?
I want to offer you two possible topics of which you can pick one that we can talk about before this show, and the other one we'll probably talk about eventually anyway. And those are the use of marijuana or sleep paralysis that I have experienced. Which would you rather discuss tonight?
Oh my gosh.
Biggies.
Whoo. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, I really want to talk about both of them, but
yeah,
I feel like I've got to hear about sleep paralysis.
Okay. Good choice. Ding. Choice number 2. Okay. So this is something that's been on my mind ever since our talk with Mark, and I honestly forgot to bring it back up.
What the hell? Why would you not bring that up?
I know. I'm telling you. So I made a note for myself this week. I was like, I gotta get on the talk about that on the show.
Is this recent experience with sleep paralysis?
No. But when we talked to Mark and he mentioned having had sleep paralysis, I didn't want to be the guy who jumped in and was like, yeah, me too. Yeah, I did, bro. Oh, one time, totally. So scary, man. But so here's the thing. It's probably happened. So listeners, Andy and I have kind of a fascination with sleep paralysis in particular. One, because one of our favorite albums is about it, but also because it's a weird ass phenomenon. And
wait, so explain what it is.
So it's essentially the sensation that, it's like your body being asleep, but your mind is active and awake, not like dreaming, but it's that your eyes are open and you are on some level aware that you're in the room that you went to sleep in, but you cannot move. You cannot move your body. And it's really unsettling. And
a lot of times it's coupled with like a weight feeling in your chest, like something sitting on your chest, right?
Well,
and different things like that.
Directly I have not experienced, but this goes back hundreds of years to the point there was a period of time where they thought it was a demon sitting on your chest, like, doing what, I don't know, but
doing demon
hovering
things
above you or tormenting you. But so it's happened to me twice that I can recall. And here,
why have we not talked about this? I cannot believe this.
I know. I don't know why it has never come up exactly,
Well,
but so it happened
okay.
once in high school when I was 17 or 18, and then once relatively recently in the last year or so. And the weird thing is, it's never happened after waking up from a night's sleep. It's always been, both times it's been after a nap in the middle of the day, which I think is in some strange way related.
Probably,
at least for me, however my sleep cycle works during a nap, which I very rarely get. I took a lot in high school, but anyway, okay. So
Tell me more about your naps, Josh.
it's just the so in both cases I sleep on my stomach, and so the weight on the chest thing did not happen, but
Right.
it was both times. I don't know. It feels like half dreaming because you notice the room around you, but it's almost, I know this sounds a little silly, but it's almost like a warped projection of that room. Things don't look.
But your
quite
eyes
right.
are open?
Yes,
Your eyes-
definitely,
okay.
definitely open. And
And you can blink? Like you got control?
it's hard to say. It feels like things are going in slow motion a little bit, and and also something that's often associated with it that I've not experienced is the audio hallucination thing, where you
Right.
supposedly hear voices or sounds. I didn't, but it just felt like it was terrifying because I knew I was in my bed. I knew kind of like your body feels extra rigid. And like I wanted to sit up, or I wanted to, just like snap out of it and kind of wake up and get up, but I couldn't, and I definitely couldn't move my mouth, couldn't speak. And it's scary to the point that I felt both times that if someone were to come in and like shake me on the shoulder, that I still wouldn't be able to move. And it's very much like you're stuck there, as in you might be stuck there for hours or something. Yeah. And so I don't know. It's hard to say how long it lasted. Maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and eventually. So the sensation of coming out of it is almost like the weird Inception thing where you pop awake and then you realize where you are, and you're like, oh, that whole thing was basically a dream. So which is the weirdest thing about it, is that,
but it's not a dream though.
It's hard to say. It's like a weird melding of both, of waking and sleep, that your brain is doing something really odd with it. But yeah.
And you said you were scared? Like it was
yes, definitely
not a good feeling?
Yeah, not necessarily a presence of evil or anything like that, but just that my body had broken and I was going to be stuck there. Like I wouldn't be able to move ever again or something. And so, yeah, just a really odd sensation. In fact, I would love to know if any of our listeners have had that experience. Send us an email, because I would love to hear your stories, and maybe we can even read them here. But it really freaked me out. And the first time it happened was definitely before I was aware of El Cielo, the album.
Right.
And then Andy and I went on to talk a lot about that in our friendship.
And you didn't even tell me then?
I guess not. I don't know why.
What the hell?
Here's honestly, if I can subconsciously, part of me some of the time probably thought you were going to think that I made it up, or like was just trying to be earlier on in our friendship, not now. But I
specifically remember thinking like, I wish I had sleep paralysis. Like I knew it would not be fun, but there was a part of me that was like, I wish I knew what that felt like, but maybe I don't.
It's terrifying. And I think some people, genetically or neurologically, like it's a very regular happenstance that is hard to overcome. And that would truly be horrific. And I don't know whether there is a cure for it, so to speak, or even a sort of rhythm as far as like, don't do this before you go to sleep and it shouldn't happen. Don't eat a bunch of food or like drink enough water or something very simple. It might be related to things like that.
Sure. So, don't take naps.
Yeah.
This I was just listening to a Joe Rogan podcast with Pete Holmes.
Yeah, I was listening to that today.
But they were talking about it was a short section. He was talking about lucid dreaming and astral projection.
Yes.
That stuff is so fascinating to me, especially lucid dreaming, because I've had a lot of weird dreams lately, and it'd be nice to be able to have lucid, because that just basically means you're aware of your dream and you can start controlling it and like being in your own world.
Right.
But I would love to do it just because I've had so many kind of disturbing or not nice dreams that it'd be nice to realize that it's a dream and be able to, for one, just be free of it and be like, okay, this isn't real.
Yeah.
And two, being able to like screw with it and do something else.
Yeah.
Like last night I had a dream that my wife committed suicide in a zoo.
Oh my
And it was the weirdest. It was terrible, and I really wished I didn't have that dream. I wish I could have realized like, oh, this is not a dream. I can control this. So I could just go watch the monkeys be stupid or something,
Right.
instead of being sad about my wife killing herself. So,
yeah, our brains come up with some weird stuff.
yeah, and I don't even know what to think about astral projection, because that's like literally, well, I don't even know how to describe it. Like basically going out of your body and doing something else or something.
Yeah, but it's apparently a conscious practice that people do certain things to get themselves to that point. I don't know about that. Truly, I mean,
yeah, I don't.
I love
either.
hearing about it.
I mean, Sinbad grabbed that acorn or whatever in that story.
Yeah.
Did you hear that in the podcast?
Yeah, it's weird stuff. I did.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
fascinating stuff. The brain. Joe Rogan, by the way, is real. I've really grown to like that show because more so than any other lately, that is just like a interview show. I glean information from it and education. I would go so far as to say.
yeah.
Yeah, he's got a unique thing going there.
And he seems very well, he seems crazy in some ways. Like he's the bro that probably would have beat me up in high school in some senses, but also he seems very tempered in his opinions on a lot of things that surprise me in some ways.
He's pretty well-rounded.
Yeah, and so I really appreciate that.
Oh, I meant he's well-rounded because he has a bald head.
Oh,
yeah.
And his biceps and his big thighs.
Yeah, he's a freak. Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, Andy,
Well,
dang, I forgot.
What?
Oh, sorry. Well, you got more. Go ahead.
No. What were you gonna? I was about to move on to something.
We forgot
else.
to thank our new patron. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Hey.
So yeah, we got a new patron this week, Rob Fleming. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes.
Every time a bell rings, that means we got a new patron.
Hey, ring that bell.
An angel.
Ring that bell up to a cool 100K, baby. Yeah, thank you, Rob, for supporting the show. Rob is one of our few listeners who have actually met in person, and he's a musician, and yeah, good dude.
If you pay $5 a month, you too can hang out with Josh.
Might even
That's
meet
part of the
me.
deal.
Dang. Whew.
And who doesn't want that?
I mean, nobody I know doesn't want to continue knowing me. So you get it?
Okay.
But yeah. But you can support our show, and that $5 does a lot for us, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And obviously we're appreciative of every one of those. But so yeah, you can find out more, get access to exclusive stuff by going to inkandecho.com/Patreon. Go there, visit it, type it, click it, do it, fix it, box it, break
Bop
it.
it.
Remember that Daft
Bop
Punk
it.
song?
Spin it. Slap it.
And that little song it would do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Hey, I was thinking yesterday about, well, not just yesterday, I think about this a lot, but yesterday I did a deep dive into my stupid Spotify playlist that I
Yeah,
up with.
and you broadcast it live on the Twitter sphere.
I have a good time. So it's this playlist. It is currently 14 and a half hours of just...
It's a lot of tent.
It's is a large amount of content. It is just late 90s, early 2000s rock, metal, new metal music that I remember from my middle school and high school days, and I am very fond of, and I still unironically listen to every once in a while. But I just get in these weird moods where I just get insanely nostalgic. And so yesterday I went to the playlist and I dug deep for songs that weren't yet on the playlist. So I found some that I couldn't believe. Like I hadn't heard it in 20 years or something. It was like not a big band.
Right.
And so, but I mean, so basically I want to, like, nostalgia. Well, this goes a few different places. For one, nostalgia is a very fascinating feeling to me. Like it feels not really good and not really bad. It's this weird kind of in between for me. But I'm very fascinated and I enjoy it. And I know a lot of people kind of think nostalgia is annoying and stupid. But and maybe this isn't the right question to ask, but I find myself thinking, what even is the value of nostalgia? And then I counter myself with, like, well, what is the value of any feeling? Why does a feeling have to have value? But I just I don't understand the point, kind of. Like when I drive through my old neighborhood and I say, oh, there's the Hastings used to be there. That's where I bought, that's where I bought my Lenny Kravitz CD or something.
There's the dorm where I used to live that's now rubble.
Yeah, exactly. But and I feel something kind of deep and heavy, and I don't know why or what. I think of, there's no value in that feeling. I don't think.
I would disagree for sure.
What is the value in? Because here's what I think in nostalgia. It's like there are things that don't really matter. Like the fact that my dorm got bulldozed. It's like, well, it's not that I want to hold on to that thing. It's just the realization that something that I had is now like completely gone for the rest of my life. Yeah. And that ranges from like my grandma died, or to, like a fast food place I ate at once when I was 7 is no longer there. Like things that don't matter one bit. It's just crazy that it can span that whole gamut of importance. And I just don't know really what to do with it other than be fascinated with it and kind of enjoy it in bursts.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it. I think the fascination is kind of that is the value. Because, I mean, it could be said, and maybe we know people like this or have run into them, but who kind of live in that space a little too much. Who dwell on the past only, as if...
Like the high school is the best time in their life, people, or that kind of thing.
That'd probably be one of the more common ones. But I don't know. I tend to think of... I like to think about who I was at the time that I was living somewhere or absorbing something, or when it was valuable to me, and just going, dang, that feels very close, and yet it's 16 years ago, and to even be old enough now to be able to say something is a decade old, or I don't know, some people might get sad about that, but I think it's kind of interesting because presumably more mature now, you've grown in your thinking, your mind is expanded, and you can kind of, I don't know, have a recognition for both foolishness as a youth, but also kind of the things that were beautiful about it. And I don't know, I think that can take your brain to some creative places, actually.
Sure.
I just think about the first... Like I have a deep love for Stephen King, as you know, Andy. And the first thing I read by him was Insomnia, which I just randomly picked up at the library. And I was age 16 at the time. And I remember it smelled so much like cigarettes, and it kind of grossed me out, but I stuck with it because it was so fascinating. And just, I don't know, I would love actually, and plan to at some point, reread that book, because I'm sure it would just I'm sure my memories of it are maybe a little skewed, but kind of in a good way. And it's just like that was my introduction to one of my favorite authors. And I don't know, I love sort of riding down those brain waves.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's exactly how I feel listening to those songs I put on this playlist too. It's like, I'm thinking about them in such a different way. But the other, speaking specifically about these songs, like, it is so cool to shit on like new metal right now.
Sure.
It has been for a little while, but I am so, I don't know what word to use, but I am so tired of people. Like there's a whole group of people who grew up, they're in high school the same year I was, and they loved that music the same way I loved it. And then they just turned around and talk about it like it didn't mean anything to them. And that really bothers me.
Yeah.
Because I just am so unapologetic about, no, I don't think I'll ever not enjoy that stuff. Like, it just so happened that I went to high school from 2000 to 2004. That's the stuff that was on the radio. And I'm not going to feel bad about that. Or, and it even goes so far as like, it's really cool to like shit on Nickelback or Creed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like half the people who are making those jokes, like, you bought Human Clay.
Oh yeah.
You knew all the words to Higher,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm so not on board with like people who think they're all of a sudden too cool to like sing along with Rollin' like I do in the car.
Yeah. I know.
I want to embrace it. I want everyone to embrace it. There's no such thing as a guilty pleasure.
Well, and
music.
those are going to be the same people 15 years from now who are like, oh, hipsters, man. Like, oh, Bon Iver and Kanye. Can't believe we listened to that shit.
Do you think so? I think people view nu metal as this weird glitch where like, oh, that was a huge mistake. We're never going to. Whereas I'm like, no, that was badass. And I don't care who knows it. I don't care who knows it. I think it's great.
You stay strong, Andy, in that belief. Good for you.
But here's the other thing is, so do you think that in 5 to 10 years, the nu metal sound is going to come back like everything else does?
From this vantage point, I would have a hard time seeing it ever really have a resurgence in the way that it did. I could totally see some bands doing it nostalgically, to use that word, and it would be kind of like this jokey thing, and they'd use their band name would be like Pimp Liz Kid or something ridiculous where it's a clear reference to the past. But it'd be hard to see like a large group of people really truly getting into that as brand new music, brand new bands.
But do you think people like maybe the mid 90s, if I would have asked the same question and said, do you think, like 80s synth music will make a comeback at all? Like, do you feel like, I wonder if their response would be the same as what you just told me about that.
Yeah.
And it totally came back and is back.
Right.
And I mean, I just don't know. But I would love for it to come back strong and just be like, see, you guys all suck. You all bandwagon idiots.
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible. You're probably right. I mean, maybe it'll be 20, 25 years from which I guess, that'd put it about 10 to 15 years from now. And, what is his name? Fred Durst will be like in his 60s, but he'll be this legend of like, oh man, he was the one who pioneered this shit, man. Like,
he was breaking stuff before we were.
Yeah. And then he'll go tour the casinos with.
Oh no! Can you imagine seeing Fred Durst on a big old billboard? So Route 66 Casino. Thursday night, Fred.
It's just, there's no way to put any band next to Route 66 Casino and have it look not pathetic.
That's so funny. That's going to happen, man. Like, Korn is going to do the casino circuit eventually.
Yeah, and you'll be there, Andy.
Oh, and Slipknot, the 60-year-old guys are going to be wearing their masks and stuff. Oh my gosh.
I wonder if they'll still beat each other up on stage. That was always the thing. What a world. It's gonna be interesting to see.
Yeah. I I wish we could talk about nu metal more. We need to incorporate that in somehow. It's one of my biggest passions. We need to get more. Maybe I could have like a nu metal spot segment. I know I used to have the internet comments. Maybe I'll just point out some sick part of a nu metal song from 2002 or something.
Sure. Yeah, that's our demographic for sure. I feel like I would love to have you show me those things one-on-one. I don't know if on our show I want to subject our listeners to such things.
I would be so excited about it. That would be the entertaining part, I guess.
Indeed. I mean, you can try one perhaps and see how it goes.
Okay.
And if our downloads drop by 75% that week,
we can do a hashtag battle, say nu metal no or nu metal yes.
And half the people would spell it NEW metal.
Oh, those people are 15.
Which is incorrect.
They don't know. Yeah. Okay, thanks for letting me talk about nu metal and nostalgia for a little bit.
Yeah. Andy, I feel like every week I'm more excited about our sponsor.
Oh man, our sponsors are just getting better and better.
We're really hitting the ranks of the good folks here. That sentence didn't make sense. Andy, this week this is not a very common thing. This is an audio movie trailer for a film that is coming out this summer. And
okay.
I'll get out of the way and let this.
Man, we're getting the summer blockbusters.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
This is it. Here we go. In 2013, you saw Jake Gyllenhaal face off against himself in the mind-bending original thriller, Enemy. This summer, enter a world where we're gonna get some more Jake Gyllenhaals in here.
Listen, actor Jake Gyllenhaal, I saw a guy at the public library who had our same face. I think it's happening again. No way, Professor Jake Gyllenhaal. I can't believe it. I thought there was only us two, the enemy Jake Gyllenhaals, who are now friend Jake Gyllenhaals.
But Library Jake Gyllenhaal isn't the only other Jake Gyllenhaal in this motion picture event.
I can't believe it. They're all over the place. They're everywhere. They're at the bus station. They're working at Blippi's. They're all over Natural Grocers Vitamin Cottage locations. The whole world is turning into Jake Gyllenhaals.
You're gonna need a bigger screen to fit all these Jake Gyllenhaals.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes?
Sir, we have a situation here. The Jake Gyllenhaals have gotten into the drinking water, sir. Some kid, he pulled a Jake Gyllenhaal out of his cereal box. Somebody opened a can of Campbell's tomato soup and it was full of nothing but Jake Gyllenhaals. Pretty soon, sir, all of our food and water supply is going to be replaced with Jake Gyllenhaals. Dear God.
Take that, all you Jake Gyllenhaals! This world isn't big enough for all of you! Go back to the Gyllen hell from whence you came!
This summer, get ready to take the Jake Express train into Gyllenhaal land. Enemy 2. A bunch more enemies.
I think I've finally escaped all the Jake Gyllenhaals on this island here in Antarctica, where it is too cold for Jake Gyllenhaals to survive in the wild. Oh, hi there. I'm Jake Gyllenhaal.
Okay, kids. Thanks for listening to that sponsor ad. And now here's our interview with the lovely, delicious Devin Shelton. So hey Devin, we're in the podcast now.
We're in it.
All right. Hey guys.
How are you this evening?
I'm doing really well. Just got my little boy to bed, so that always is a task in itself. So
how many kids do you have?
I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son.
Okay.
Not caught up to Andy yet, huh? Mm-mm. You got 2 to go.
You
to
have
hit
like
par.
8, don't you, or something?
I have 8, and I have 4.
That sounds like a house full.
If you put both Josh and Devin's kids together, you still wouldn't beat me. So,
dang.
Well, you're a brave man, that's for sure.
I do my best. Well, Devin, there seems like, I mean, there are plenty of podcasts, and you've been out there a lot of talking about, probably your past with Emery and stuff. But I'm sort of really interested in some of your more recent things that have happened.
Okay.
And I mean, particularly, we talk a lot here about quitting jobs and wanting to quit jobs and what it's like on either side of that spectrum. So I'm pretty, and I've heard a little bit about it on Bad Christian or whatever, but so you had a church job for how many years was it? It was quite a while, was it not?
Yeah, I worked at a church for right around 5 years.
Okay, and you were worship pastor? Was it more than that, or was that all the job entailed?
That was basically it. The first couple years, I was also the college minister, which doesn't mean a whole lot. It was just kind of like whenever kids showed up, I would talk to them.
Minister,
but
you weren't leading a college youth group, so to speak.
Well, I was, but
okay.
it's pretty inconsistent overall. So I mean, I invested time, but 80% of what I did was with music and service planning and stuff like that.
Gotcha. And what were you doing before that? Was it Emery or was it something else?
Yeah, it was just Emery before that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I have two paths I want to go with this, but I mean, firstly, so you're doing Emery full time, and then you're doing church full time, or combining the two in random ways. And so from what I gather now, you are 100% back in Emery, and you've got all these other things that you're doing too. So I guess I'm just curious, like what are you doing now? Maybe just like give me a bullet list of all the things you're doing now that's replacing that job.
Sure. Well, for starters, I kind of got back in with Emery partially last year. And we just did like a handful of those acoustic tours, which is something that the other guys, Matt and Toby, wanted to do as well. And so it just happened to work out that I could take some small, little chunks of time off work, basically, and do that. And so that kind of got me back into it to some degree, even though I still worked basically full time. And but it just kind of gave me the itch, and I wanted to get back in and be a part of what was going on. And so I decided at the end of last year to basically quit my church job, and I'm still helping with music a couple times a month, and I'll still lead and play bass and things like that. But yeah, as of now, I'm fully back in Emery, and also I started, I guess you could say, managing the Bad Christian online like store and inventory and promotion, marketing, things like that. And also we created a company, kind of a branch of Bad Christian called BC Supply, which is a high-end, high quality products company. We just have quite a few different things in that, but cool. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I guess that's mostly all of it.
And
cool.
So the last time I heard anything from you was when you were, the last thing I listened to was you on Bad Christian, which was several months back when the BC Supply had not quite launched, I don't think. So how has it gone thus far? Has it been quote unquote successful or done
Have you
as
bought
well
that
as you
mansion
guys
yet
hoped?
or no?
Oh yeah. It's on it's on layaway right now, I guess you could say, right? No, it's going well. I mean, I've never, other than Emery, I've never owned a business before, so it's a slow grow process, and
for sure, yeah.
It's I get pretty anxious and want to move quickly and do things like as fast as I can, but that stuff takes money, so it's going really well. It's just a matter of kind of building the brand, but having Bad Christian, the fan base and the Emery core, obviously helps with that. So that's been a nice kickstart for us, which is good.
Yeah.
Right. Now, was the BC Supply thing, was it an idea that you've had in your head for a long time, or was it an idea that was born out of like, well, I'm quitting my job, I need to find something to do? So like, which one, what was it?
It wasn't really an idea that we had talked about it in the past, but I think it was our first acoustic tour last year in 2016. We kind of just got in this conversation about starting. I think we were first talking about like a clothing line. And we were like, well, we don't want to do a generic clothing line. Everybody kind of does that. And so
Right.
It got a little bit more in depth, a little bit more in detail about, hey, maybe we could do more than just clothes. Maybe we could do some other type of products, leather and, just all kind of stuff. And so it kind of morphed into that from the original idea of just like a clothing line of some sort.
Right.
It was kind of originally supposed to be like maybe a branch of the Bad Christian, like almost like themes and phrases that Bad Christian does and uses.
Right.
Like on their podcasts, or just clever or goofy little things they do to make them more of like a t-shirt kind of brand. But we were like, well, that's a little goofy, so we don't want to just do that. So
There'd be too many bad words on shirts too.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny because there were some mock-ups of some of that stuff.
Oh, I want to see some of those.
Yeah, we'll have to pull those out one day.
Nice.
Does your personality lend well to the sort of entrepreneurial, that all that businessman, or did you just kind of adopt it because you were put in this situation?
I think my personality does, but I've always been a little scared to take like big risks,
Sure.
just because
Matt will take those risks for you, man.
Yeah,
He'll just
or
dive in.
he'll talk somebody else into taking the risk, something like that.
Yeah.
But Matt's, obviously Matt has always been the guy who is not really afraid to try anything. And with Emery, obviously that was a pretty big risk for all of us, moving across the country and leaving everything behind and just trying to make it happen. So that's always kind of been in our blood, I guess. But then, as you get older and responsibility kind of kicks in, you have family, things like that, you're like, well, it's maybe better to play it safe here. I don't really know. So, that's always kind of come into play for me, is like, okay, I have responsibilities that I need to make sure I take care of, and I can't just do whatever I want.
Right.
But, so I'm probably 50-50 on that, that risk kind of, I lean towards, just being responsible, but I have those urges and tendencies to take those risks as well.
Right. So what was the when the church job happened 5 years ago, was it because of that, the safe 50%, or was it something else that got you
I would say so. I would say I mean, when I first started thinking about it, my wife and I were, wanted to have a family and start having kids, and my friend, I had already been kind of involved at our church and playing and things like that, and he would joke around with me about working at the church and stuff like that, and so I had an idea that I could actually get a job there, and it would be stable, and I'd have a routine, and I'd make a consistent paycheck, and so, that definitely played into it. If I didn't have something that I was pretty sure would happen, I probably wouldn't have left the band at that moment. I would have probably,
Right.
I'd probably waited until something came up at least.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so that sort of leads me into the other path of the question about the church job, and it's just, and so this is, I'm trying to think how to say this.
Were you fed up with it? No, I'm just
No.
kidding. I do
I'm
actually
trying to-
want to know that, but Andy was going to ask something more
Well,
diplomatic.
it'll get there, but I mean, I just, as someone who's a musician, okay, so I'm going to give you some backstory to this question or statement just because I feel like it's important.
Okay.
It's like I didn't really grow up with Christian music. I got there late, and I got there so late that I looked at it all and was like, this all sucks and I'm not going to listen to it. And I've always felt Emery, I didn't see you guys as Christian music. I've always loved Emery. So,
Oh, cool.
are you? Which is that's a whole nother thing that I'm on your label, and I've been listening to you since college. So whatever. But but attached to that is kind of like I've never felt like connected to the music in church at all. In fact, I'm pretty resistant to it. And so where I'm going with this is just that whenever I see a singer from a band that I like get a job at a church, I always get really bummed out.
You hate him?
No, I don't hate him. I just feel like, it's like there's you and Toby from Emery. There's Stephen from Ann Berlin, Stephen, and like the Dustin from Thrice. I was like, you guys were all making really cool music, and I felt like you kind of willingly put yourself in a situation where your creativity would be stifled. So that's like my outside perspective, and I have the luxury of being able to do music outside of a church system.
Right.
But so I guess my question is like, did you feel that going in, and did your feeling? I mean, not that. Well, maybe you know what I mean, but just like, did you feel any sort of confliction? Is that a word? Did you feel conflicted at all going in, and did that change over time over those 5 years? Does that make sense at all, or was that way too long of a
It does.
thing?
No, it does. I probably felt a little bit of that tension when I first went in, but it was something new. It was different, so in that respect, it was, I didn't really have those negative feelings towards it as much. I mean, I wasn't like a huge fan of typical worship music or anything like that. But what I liked about it to start with was that I felt like I had this challenge to come in and improve this area, to help make it better, to help challenge musicians to maybe, for the whole quality of everything to hopefully get better. And I feel like it did. I mean, we still had to play songs that I didn't like, sometimes things like that.
Right.
And that's, to me, that was just a something that I just kind of had to deal with. I didn't. There were times when I just, I was like, well, this song, it sucks too bad. I just can't. I can't deal with this. But then there's plenty that are just pretty generic. I mean, they're just church songs or just worship songs, and I was like, well, I can deal with this because the music might be okay, or this part of a song is pretty good or whatever. And so over time, I kind of developed this way of just kind of accepting what it was and not really being too critical of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, in the same regard, over the years, it definitely wore me down a little bit more to where that creativity was beginning to feel a little bit more stifled, and couldn't just do whatever, we couldn't just do whatever we wanted to. There was limitations to what people would be okay with and what people wanted to hear.
Right.
And that's what I've kind of found is the church is just kind of like a mini, culture.
Yes.
There's so many people who love really crappy music on the radio, right? I mean, there's a ton. I mean, probably the majority of people in the world, or in America, like radio music I'm not saying I don't like any radio music, but radio music that I don't like. And in the same respect, there's tons of people in the church that love all this worship music that I think is just horrible.
Yeah. And you can't really fault them for it. You can't say like that's wrong that you like it. But yeah,
exactly.
So
yeah.
totally.
But so you're right. It did become a little bit more of a challenge for me to kind of drudge through some of those things that I didn't like, and over time it just kind of felt wrong. And part of it was not just the music, but more just the feeling of the culture and the way the inside of a church can be sometimes. But I don't disagree with you that it's a little bit of a a demotion for guys from kind of cool bands that take these church styles. But in all honesty, it's a safe and easy outlet, for guys who've been touring for a long time. And it's
you
one
get
of
to use your skills and and make some good money.
Right.
Enough money.
Exactly. And it's, it's not like we can just stop and do anything, our degrees, or even people who don't have degrees. I mean, our skill set is fairly limited. So it's not, we have a few options and that's about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. 'Cause one of my thoughts when you mentioned, top 40 radio, I have this thing, and maybe this is another me spouting off potentially my opinion, and I'd be happy to have one or both of you say that I'm wrong about it. But one of the ways I see worship music and music in churches, or I guess I've tried to figure out what my problem with it is and be able to really quantify it. And I think,
or just your problem in general.
What is my problem in general? It's just that it seems to be like, because I'm with you. I don't really like top 40 music, and I think the reason is because it feels like they wrote it for me, like I'm being pandered to, like they found some sort of formula that they think, a bunch of like 9 producers came together and said, this is going to be a hit. We need to write it this way,
right?
And it's also kind of like when I was a kid, I very distinctly remember not liking kids songs, like children's music, because it was written for me, and they thought I was like this stupid idiot who just wanted to sing about apples or something. And you know what I mean? And I feel like that's why I have such a problem with church music, because it's artists. I'm not saying it's not art, but it's not being created for the right reason, in my opinion. It's being created, it seems like a good reason, like, hey, we want you to experience this really good thing. But I think that that's sort of a little bit insidious in the sense that, like, well, I think the way people encounter cool things is because someone created what they wanted to create with no restrictions and boundaries on themselves. So that, again, that wasn't a question. I just, I wonder how you feel about those analogies, or if I'm just totally off base.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. I definitely can relate to, that. I mean, in a sense of, especially within the worship music culture, that's such a weird thing anyway. It's such a weird genre. It's so specific.
Isn't it?
Not
isn't
only
it
is
crazy
it written
that you say the word worship and you immediately know like 10 things about what it's going to sound like.
Yeah. I mean, it's
crazy to me.
Because, and two, not only you say, it feels like it's written for you, but I mean, Christian worship music is written specifically for Christians only.
Yeah.
I mean, that's who it's written for. I mean, they hope that non-Christians listen to it and, want to know Jesus or whatever. And maybe, I'm sure that happens, but it is written specifically for people to worship God to. And that's fine. It just doesn't feel like it should be a giant industry. You know what I mean? That's what's so weird about it. It's like, oh yeah, you write songs to sing in church together because you're all Christians and you want to worship God together. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But it is this giant industry that makes millions of dollars, and it just makes me feel really weird. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
I just don't totally get it. But on the other end of that, I mean, top 40 music and stuff, for me, I mean, I don't really listen to the radio. I don't love all of it. I don't have a problem with, some of the stuff or whatever. But one thing that I do like about it is I've always kind of respected people who could just have this formula of a song and just create this. Basically, it's a pretty high percentage chance that certain people can write a song that's gonna sell a lot, that people are gonna like. And if I think it's a little bit of a talent to be able to figure out that formula. I mean, I think that's kind of a that's a higher level of musicianship to some degree. They might not be super artsy or expressive in that regard, but maybe they're past that. You know what I mean? I feel like it's almost when people start, we really want to protect our artistry, and we want to protect we want want to defend what we do, and that's good and fine, and I think that's great to do in some regard your whole career. But I also think that it's okay to, if you figure out how to do something really well that millions of people will like, then more power to you, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
So.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Andy. It's sort of like, it does make me think of, though, the whole, not to go deep into this because Devin wouldn't know what we're talking about, but like the Stranger Things thing of basically simplest way to say it is just like, well, if people like it, what's wrong with it? Kind of. I mean, that's right. One side of it. Worship music might, to some people, really bring them to a place with God that's very lovely and personal and whatever. But on the flip side of it, like you were saying, it is an industry that panders to these trends and that it is formulaic and probably not a lot of art left in it, that because it's just sort of recopying what works. So anyway, it's like there's two sides of it, and we just all happen to fall on the side of not caring for that kind of stuff very much.
Right.
So
yeah, totally.
So would you say that was, how big of what we just talked about is the reason you wanted to stop working at the church?
I would say maybe 50%.
Okay.
Of it, and the other half would be just kind of the ongoing trend of how Christians are viewed in culture, and how it's just a lot of that is pretty accurate based on how you know what I mean, how people act sometimes. I mean, I got nothing against anybody specifically,
sure,
or anything like that. It's just an overall feeling that I kind of get.
Wait, so you mentioned earlier that you went on, to lead worship because you wanted to like improve it or change it.
Uh-huh.
Did you feel that in a bigger sense too, in terms of the culture? Like, did you feel like, oh, it'd be cool to change the culture in this church to something better, and then maybe you realized that you couldn't, or was there any of that involved in this?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it does. And I think there was definitely a slow change in culture at our church, and that was it. It was pretty natural. There was a big turnover in staff, a few years ago, and a new pastor, things like that, and did things way differently. And over the last year and a half, there was a huge rift, in one segment of the church and the other segment. It's just totally typical,
Right.
Yeah, such a
some
common
people
story.
Some people want change, some people don't. So it's just, and I would push, really hard for some things, and just I would often, encourage people not to care so much. I mean, care about people, but don't care what they think about what you're doing or why you're doing it, and not look for approval so much. And that was that was one thing that because I was like the associate worship minister, so I had a boss above me, and that was one thing he said to me when I was deciding to leave. He was like, don't you want to be part of the change? Is that something that you want to do? And that's what I feel like the pushback would be, is like, well, why would you should have stayed in there and really tried to change. But I had an experience when I used to play on a worship team like years and years ago. I tried to change, and one of and I wasn't leading, I was just playing, but I was kind of like trying to we should all come prepared each week. Like, how about that? We all know our parts. Like, that was a thing I had to try to get people to do. But there was one week where, and this was the point where I knew I should probably stop, where I got in trouble because apparently, I don't even remember doing it, but apparently I shot the drummer just like a mean look on stage. Like, just totally gave him the hairy eyeball, and people could see that. But so someone came and talked to me about it. I was like, well, maybe this isn't
the best place for me, or the best use of my creative energy. And so I
It's only way to
stopped
communicate on stage when you're in the middle of playing. You got to shoot some eyeballs around.
I know. Well,
Good,
it's
bad,
like,
you
hey, we
gotta
practiced
tell 'em.
this 4 times, and you were supposed to come prepared, and you didn't. Still
yeah.
didn't get it right. So
Totally.
I was like, this is. I need to not do this because I don't think I'm helping anymore.
Right.
So that was my experience. So yeah, that was part of my question too. Is that tension of, yeah. So that guy was suggesting that you stay to try to be the change. Is that what you're saying?
Well, he wasn't like, it was just kind of a conversation, we were having, and I was just
Right.
trying to, and we're good friends. We were friends before we worked together. So I just kind of explained to him, how I felt and why. And he was like,
well,
he
you're in
understood,
sin.
but he
Get
was
outta
like,
here.
don't you want to, wouldn't you want to be part of the change, within the church?
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, yeah, sure. But I don't feel like I have to be on staff to be a part of the change or,
Yeah.
and I don't, and also I kind of think some of that is a little bit futile too, it's like,
Yes.
you're banging a brick wall and not making any dents.
Yes.
Yeah. So it
Totally.
seems this is somewhat related, but a lot of people our age, and Devin, I think you're maybe a little older than us, but seem to be going through sort of a big, I don't know if a crisis of faith, but certainly a reevaluation of what they grew up believing. Was that and is that an element whatsoever with you at the moment or prior?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's you guys know, the Bad Christian guys, and a lot of people that listen to it, and that basically their conversations now are basically the conversations we've been having in Emery, for the past 10, 15 years.
Right.
To some degree, and so we've been having these long hour conversations about church and just different aspects of Christianity and beliefs and all that. And so, yeah, it's been a long process of evaluating, exactly what we believe and why certain things matter within the church. And so, yeah, but over the past few years, for sure, has become a little bit more of an intense evaluation of what I believe and why certain people feel so strongly about protecting traditions and things that they hold stronger than the words of Jesus sometimes. And I'm not saying that I don't do that too. I do it probably in many ways that I don't realize, but I just it's just I feel like you're right. I'm almost 40. I'll be 40 in a couple of years, and it's been like a whole life evaluation. Like, what do I want to be and do for the rest of my life? I don't want to look back and regret not only job stuff and music and things like that, but I don't want to look back and regret being stubborn with allowing myself to think outside the box and not just continue down the path of what I've learned as a kid, but to think for myself. And so, yeah, definitely that's definitely part of it, and it's changed quite a bit. And, sometimes I have to reel myself back in a little bit. I'm like, okay, let me take a step back and, kind of ground myself a little bit and then start to reach out again. But yeah, that's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think overall that is going to end up being a good thing. For the bulk of our culture, however many at least American Christians are currently experiencing that. I don't know where we're going to land exactly, but it is tricky. And you mentioned reeling yourself in. There's a lot of voices in the world right now, and a lot of them are sort of collectively saying, like, religion's done, like we're too intelligent for this, we're past it, like, we should be smarter and we should realize science is all that's left. And it's really hard not to let that stuff soak in, and I think it's healthy to consider it and just be like, well, let's go over here for a minute, maybe they're right, let's think about this anyway. Stuff is very at the forefront of my mind. So
yeah, I agree. And that's what, and I think, like you said, I think it's healthy to be able to consider something without being afraid that you're going to lose what you have, and I think that's what a lot of Christians typically are. And I mean, I grew up in South Carolina, and it's a really strong Bible Belt, conservative, and you just don't even entertain thoughts outside of what you've learned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's just way, way different. And, but yeah, I think, like, I don't know when, and I'm not, it's not like a prophecy or something, but, I just think in the next 10 to 20 years, like, something big has to happen, whether it's a big church, Christian culture, like church split or something, almost like the Protestant Catholic thing again, where it's like progressive, traditional, kind of and I mean, that's already kind of happening. There are churches who are, they're accepting of certain things that other churches aren't, and so forth. Right. But I almost think they'll get to some point in the future where you won't even you won't even lump yourself in with another denomination on the other side of this big chasm. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's interesting too, because at least on the Bad Christian podcast, they equate politics and church stuff a lot, which is, it would be nice to see what the trajectory of Christian culture, American Christian culture, if it could be different than the trajectory of politics right now, that would just be really good, because it seems like politics is just, there's a left and the right, and they are just going farther and farther apart.
Right.
And that seems to be because people are like staking their flags on just a side and going along with a lot of ideologies that maybe they wouldn't have gone with if they'd have just thought about it for a second. And my hope is with church stuff that people, it would almost just, instead of like split and be like, here's these two different ways that you can choose, to be like, well, it just kind of shatters, and like, here's a million different ways you could do it. That would, right, in my mind, that seems like a better, like, one of the things I remember Matt saying on Bad Christian was like, church should be a spectrum far more than it is now. Just like, instead of, a couple dots on the line, it's just like, there's all these dots, you could do it all these different ways, and then we could not be scared of that and not demonize the other dots on the line. I guess that seems better to me. I hope we could be better than politics, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. If it goes like politics, I mean, it could be really bad. But it's not far off at this point, but hopefully it gets better.
Right. So I'm curious, so the new album Sensation, it's like very different from Emery.
Yeah.
Was that basically why did you do that?
Yeah, I mean,
why didn't you do more of the same forever, over and over?
Yeah. I don't like it when my favorite artists do different things. I really wish you wouldn't.
It's a really dumb decision. No, I definitely have always enjoyed, kind of the R&B, pop, soul kind of style, ever since I was younger and all through, high school and everything. And so, I just always had a respect for that genre and really good vocals and, all that. Just, I don't know, just the way it makes me kind of feel, it's just the feeling of the music has a very unique kind of feel to that style. And so I've always liked it a lot. And I guess it was probably 8 or 9 years ago, while I was still, in Emery, we were kind of in the middle of, it was a good time for us and doing a lot of touring and stuff, but I had just some other songs, and I just kind of started messing around with some R&B stuff. And I kind of demoed maybe 2 or 3 songs, put them on MySpace back in the day, and
nice.
Just kind of had some fun with it, and just did some stuff at home when we weren't on tour. And I worked with Dave a couple times on making me some drum tracks, some demos, and Matt helped me a little bit, but it never went anywhere, never had time to really finish it. And so about a year and a half ago, I called up Matt and just basically said, hey, I want to make an album, and this is what I want it to be, and this is what I'm going to do. And he was like, all right, well, let me hear some songs. And so I had about I had about 5 or 6 old ones that I had for years, and I kind of refreshed him on those, and then I had already written a few new ones too. And so
Nice.
yeah, we just kind of did a combined record of old and new, and yeah, that was kind of that. And I put out an album a few years ago after I had been out of Emery for maybe like a year or so. And it was more Emery-esque. I mean, it was more like indie rock kind of stuff. So I was like, well, I just kind of want to do something different this time.
Nice.
Yeah, it's smooth. It's groovy, baby. Woo!
Thanks,
Look
man.
out. Woo! I'm just kidding. I'm just being ridiculous. But it is really nice. I did listen to it. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Who were some of the artists growing up or today that really inspired that sort of love of that kind of music?
I was a big Michael Jackson fan in the
Nice.
80s. And then later on, probably in high school, college, I got more into like older stuff like Sam Cooke. I was always a big fan of just kind of the style, like the Temptations, that kind of stuff. I always thought that was really catchy and good stuff like that. I mean, I can't lie. I was a huge fan of Boyz II Men in the 90s, man. I just was. I mean, I love their vocal harmonies and Babyface. He wrote some cool acoustic songs back then. And, being from the South, I didn't really have much exposure to underground music or anything until college, and we met some guys, that listened to it. So it was all like R&B, pop, gospel, country. I mean, I listened to some country back then, Garth Brooks and whatnot. So, but yeah,
Nice.
that's just some of the artists that influenced me early on. I was like, man, this has got something to it. I like this. I like the feel.
Yeah, there's something so satisfying about for sure vocal harmonies, but also just like the best production in the business. I mean, with those
Right.
big artists, obviously, those records are flawless.
Yeah.
Yeah, so fun.
So what is your relation to Emery's style of music now, like the screamo? Has it changed over time? Are you as excited about it as you were in 2001 or whatever when it started?
No, I mean, I would probably say not as much. I mean, I still really enjoy even our old songs, and I mean, they're all kind of nostalgic,
Sure.
And it was really cool for the last album, You Were Never Alone. I didn't have anything to do with any writing on that album, and that was the first album that I wasn't involved in the writing process at all. And so I came in from a totally outside perspective on that and listened, and I was blown away. I was like, man, this is awesome, guys. I mean, I loved it. I just thought it was really cool. It kind of took me back to some of our earlier kind of stuff, and so it was just really fun for me just to be able to kind of hear the songs, learn them, do vocals. And so that was cool because it was such a different perspective for me. So I really did enjoy that. Now we've been writing demos over the past few months, and these, just naturally, I just don't have the same style that I did before writing wise, and neither does Toby.
Yeah.
It just comes out a little different. I mean, it comes out, I guess you could say a little more mature, but that just means older.
Yeah.
A little older sounding. And so, so, I mean, we might have some, intense parts. We might have some screaming in there. And I don't hate when we play live. I mean, that kind of stuff's fun to do because it's just energetic and the crowd likes it. But when you're writing, it doesn't have the same effect as it did, 15 years ago.
Right, totally. So what you're saying is the next Emery album is going to be like a country R&B mashup.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Great. Awesome.
No, we're excited because I feel like someone asked me this on our last tour, but I think it's just kind of a next step in the progression of what has kind of happened with our previous albums. And so You Were Never Alone was a little more mellow. I mean, it had some heavier parts, but overall it was a little bit more of that feel. And so I would say just take another step in that direction. That's probably what it'll be.
Right.
Yeah. So I have a weird question, and I mean, no disrespect by this. Would you say Emery is bigger now than before, or not necessarily? Because my relationship to Emery is like, the question, that was kind of the big one, right? And I was in junior year of high school or something, and Emery was very much in the conversation of my peers, and now it's like, obviously music has changed for everybody, and it seemed like there were many bands kind of at a similar level as Emery who faded out of the ethos, I don't know, and then there's been this resurgence because of the way that people consume music and how cheap it is to record now,
and nostalgia maybe a little bit.
Yeah, totally. So what's your gauge on that, as far as, if you can even answer an ambiguous question like that?
It's funny because I do feel like we've had a resurgence. Now that could be because I'm more active again too, and I wasn't involved in everything for a few years, but overall I would say 2006, 7, 8, that range of time was probably when we were the biggest as far as like most popular at that time. We were gaining the most fans at that time. We were selling a lot of records, but that was when the music industry was kind of at its peak for that genre.
That was when you could sell records.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, that was when, we had, after the question was when we had, opportunity to go to major label, things like that. And, so yeah, I mean, that was probably our heyday, I guess you could say. And if we had followed the natural progression of most bands after that time, we would have probably quit and then, come back. That's just kind of the way it works now. Sure. And then you kind of come back and you're huge because people haven't seen you in forever. And like you said, it's nostalgic and people love it. But Emery just kind of, kept going. And I think there was a lull, but I think you're right. I think there's been a resurgence, whether or not that's in the music industry culture as a whole, or if it's, us specifically for certain reasons, I'm not sure about, but I definitely can feel a little bit more. And what we've tried to do, with Emery is we're resourceful. We try to think of new ways to stay fresh and not just do the same old thing over and over again. And so maybe that helps too. It just feels like it's a little unfair to our fans and to us to just kind of keep doing the same types of shows forever. But to kind of evolve, and because our fans are getting older too, they're not spring chickens anymore. So it's changed a lot.
But they might have some more money now though.
That is totally true. That's no joke, because I mean, we do those acoustic tours, and it's not cheap. They're like $50 tickets, but it's like a private party. We drink beer together, we hang out, take questions, talk, and then play some music for a while. And so it's a cool event, and we kind of felt bad. We're like, oh man, I don't know if that's maybe too much, but everybody there is like, oh dude, this is the best thing ever. It's only $50, and we're like, oh okay, cool. And then they buy $60 in merch, while they're there. I'm like, you guys must have really good jobs, or either you're just spending all your money on Emery stuff. So. But yeah, you're right. 10, 15 years ago, they had nothing. They'd buy a $10 t-shirt and that was it.
Oh yeah. Funny. Yeah, seriously.
So given your new career situation, does that mean like more touring, or what is your view on how much you want to travel anymore, given your family situation, but also the not having a job situation? Right.
I mean, my perspective is pretty similar on the travel, and I think the other guys are too. I mean, we want to do it when it makes sense, but we won't. I don't think any of us want to go out for long periods of time anymore. 1 to 2 weeks is about all that we want to do. And we just figure out ways to make that work without, being, frivolous with expenses and stuff like that. 'Cause that can add up, with flights, and since we don't all live in the same location and stuff. And so, we just try and be smart about that stuff. But yeah, we like to have our time at home, and with the guys doing their podcast and, all that too. I mean, that's a big time deal for them now. I mean, that's, it makes them money and it's their jobs and that they have to do it, a couple times a week. And so
Right.
that comes into play as well, which is fine with me because I enjoy being at home and got plenty of other stuff to do now as well. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
So I know this is a complete change of topic, but so I know last year your mom died. And I the reason I bring it up is because last year my grandma died, who I was very close to, and it was kind of the first like family member, like I said, who I was close to, and it was just a very crazy experience. So this is just a dumb, vague question, but what did that kind of do to you going through that process, and had you experienced something like that before with other family members or anything like that?
I had never lost anyone, I've lost my grandparents and,
Right.
but I never knew my dad's parents, and I lost my grandpa on my mom's side, when I was about, maybe 14 or 15. And then,
Okay.
and that was difficult, but I was young, and it wasn't like, we were close, but not to the point to where it affected me, tremendously. And it was kind of a slow process. And then my grandmother had dementia, and that was a long process as well. And so it's kind of gave me time to say goodbye and get to see her. And but yeah, my mom dying was totally unexpected, and it's weird because I've been to a lot of funerals. I've been I've visited with people who've lost loved ones and close family, and you really do feel really, really bad for those people, and you want to help them, and you want to say the right things. But I realized that when I lost my mom, that it's almost impossible to really understand what someone's going through in that situation. It's nice, when people are there, you get to see people you haven't seen in a long time, and they care about your mom or whoever it is. And but I just remember kind of thinking, I don't really want to do this. I don't really want to be here. I just kind of want to be sad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was kind of just the way I felt.
Yeah.
And so it was such a different feeling than coming from the outside in. It was really, really strange. And it was, it was really hard on me and the family. And since I don't live there, I'm the only one that doesn't live there.
Okay.
When I heard, I was kind of waiting because my mom, she had a heart attack, and
Okay.
they were kind of calling me, every so often to tell me kind of what was going on, because they were trying to revive her and so forth. And when they finally, after a little while, I said, well, I guess I'm just going to get in the car and drive there, because it's like a 10, 11 hour drive. Because, it wouldn't have been worth it to fly or whatever. It wouldn't have been any faster. So anyway, I just kind of got in the car and just headed that direction. And about an hour down the road is when my sister called and said, she's on the ventilator. They don't think she's going to last much longer. And
Oh, man.
I just remember it really, like, up until that point, I knew it was happening, but it's kind of shocking. It was kind of that disbelief of like, okay, wait a second, they're going to revive her and she'll be okay or whatever. But then it was kind of like that last moment there that she was like, you better call and just maybe talk to her on speakerphone or something. And so
Wow.
that was probably the hardest thing, I've ever had to do, was say goodbye to my mom on the speakerphone in my car driving to South Carolina. So
Yes.
that really, really affected me. Just cause I was like, it just made me realize that everything that we say and do, with our families and people that we really care about and love, there's so much stuff that we just waste time on. And I know that, all that stuff sounds really cliche, when you're just talking about it, but in that moment, I just remember thinking, like, why did I waste so much time? Like, just being frustrated with my mom for this or for that or doing that. It's just all this stuff it wasn't regret really. It was just more of like this realization of life is really fragile. And
Yeah.
and so it definitely affected me that way, and it affected me in writing my music. And I wanted to finish the record and do it really well because my mom, she's like my biggest fan, and so I knew she would have loved it. I knew she never stopped talk. Like if she would come to visit, her and my dad would come to visit, and I would sing at church, because I sang at church my whole life. And she, every time,
Right.
I mean, literally every time, she would say, "Devin, that is the best I've ever heard you sing, ever." And she would say that every time, regardless if it was bad or whatever. And so that was just kind of how she was. And so, but anyway, it definitely affected me, and it made me realize even more how much, how important it is to tell my family how much I love them and spend time with them and do all that stuff. So it's a good, even though it's a terrible tragedy, it's a good realization, to live life a little differently, I guess.
Did it have any effect on just, I don't know, your own view of death, of God? I mean, has there been any peace there, or anger, or anything in between?
I'm sorry, Josh, could you repeat that one more time? I lost you there.
Oh, that's
again.
all right. Yeah. I just wondered if it led you anywhere as far as like having a peace in your own view of death, or fear or anger there, or any emotion towards God, or existence and life and all that.
Yeah, it definitely it probably gave me more of a peace than anything. It didn't make me angry or afraid or anything like that. I definitely didn't experience it like that, even though it was a shock to us. To me, it was just a reminder that death, kind of happens to everybody, and it can happen at any time. And so it wasn't like I was angry at God for taking my mom. I was like, well, that's just kind of what happens to us when it happens. Mm-hmm. And so, I would say maybe it's given me a little bit more peace about that, but it's also kind of made me a little bit more aware of my own, like I said, a little bit more aware of my own mortality, and just what that means for my life and how I want to live and how I want to live, live out towards others and things like that. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. If I don't want to talk too much or anything, but something that had to do with
that's why
my
you're
mom
here.
that my parents. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, I don't want to ramble too much, but when I got to South Carolina, just in reference to Josh's question a little bit there, my siblings, they told me that I didn't. Something that I didn't know before is when they were at the hospital with my mom. Everybody was kind of around her in the bed, and she was, she wasn't awake or anything, and she was definitely she was on the ventilator, and they were, weren't sure what was going to happen, but they were pretty sure that regardless if she woke up or not, that it wasn't going to be no value to life, or whatever. And so, but they were saying she can probably hear you, if you talk to her, she won't be able to respond or anything, but she can hear you. And so my brothers and sisters were taking, time one at a time to kind of talk to her. And they said that, after everyone kind of talked to her and then I talked to her on speakerphone, I think last, they said a minute or two later, she opened her eyes and she was crying. And, I know some of this maybe sounds a little over spiritual, but this is kind of how they explained it to me. But they said she was crying, and then she just kind of closed her eyes and laid her head down. And they said she kind of squeezed their hands, I guess, when she opened her eyes. And, everybody was just like really at peace about that. And they kind of asked the nurses and doctors, like, is that normal? And they was like, well, it's normal for them to twitch and do stuff, but not really to cry. So that was a little different. And so to me, whether or not you believe or don't, whatever, to me, it just kind of gave me this feeling of like, well, I believe that God was just kind of communicating to us that, it's okay. It's good to go, and she's going to come hang out with me now, so it was just kind of a cool experience. So
yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for being so willing to be open about that.
Yeah, for sure.
So where did this land in terms of everything else that was going on with you last year? Was it before or after you quit? Because it seems like a lot of things could have happened at the same time, given how the timeline worked.
Yeah, it was right in the middle. It was early October, and so I had just told my boss that I wanted to step away from the church. Okay. And so I think it was maybe a couple of weeks before that. And it's funny because, my mom, she thought me working at the church was the best thing ever, And so it would have just broken her heart if I had quit the church. So I was like, well, that's one good aspect. I didn't have to tell my mom that I quit church. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was right around that time. And I remember, and that was uncertain, with the leaving the church and the job and everything. I was still nervous about it. I was like, oh shoot, I don't know if this is the best idea or what. And, then she passed away. I was in the middle of recording my album, doing all this BC Supply stuff. So there was a lot of stuff going on at one time, and you just at that point you just kind of drop everything and just everything kind of falls by the wayside,
Right. Yeah. That's just. It seems like kind of one of those when it rains it pours.
Yeah.
Scenarios a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. That's the truth.
Well, let's lighten it up a bit here, Andy.
Yeah, I say
not to devalue what you just said. I actually love that kind of stuff. I would love to hear you and Matt and Toby. I mean, well, I have a fairly good sense of those guys just because I've listened to hours of them talk. Sure. But I get the sense some hijinks happened on the road over the years. So I'd love to hear just like one classic tour story where it can be anything, something funny, something crazy. Give it up.
Well, I'll just tell one that we were kind of talking about recently. We came across a friend of ours who used to tour manage Me Without You, and he was with us for a tour or two. Like he ran sound, I think, and tour managed us. And we were reminiscing about this time where we were on an acoustic tour. Actually, this is the only other time we've ever done an acoustic tour. I think it was 2007, and we were on tour with these bands called Surrogate and Ruth, and both really good bands. And so one night, I forget, we were in Joplin, Missouri, and I forget what happened. I think it was right around July 4th, and so we found one of those huge like Shelton fireworks, places.
Okay.
Yep, that's right.
Namesake.
I know. I'm probably related somehow. I don't know. But yeah, so we found one of those like the day before, and I mean, we bought like $400 or $500 worth of fireworks. I mean, it was like it was like unreal. And so we're after the show, everybody's cleared out. It's kind of late. We just finished loading out. Everybody's gone except us, and so we pull out some bottle rockets. We start shooting bottle rockets out in this parking lot, and it's fun. And we get some Roman candles, start shooting those up, and then all of a sudden, a Roman candle like flies by your head. You're like, what the? And so we see like somebody from another band running at us with a Roman candle. So we all like light our own Roman candles and bottle rockets. We start shooting at each other, and so we had this unreal like hour-long firework battle. And I mean seriously, we got hit like multiple times with all kinds of fireworks. And I remember one thing we did, one band got in and they were about to leave, they were taking off, and one of the guys ran in and jumped in, and the door was open, and so we threw a big thing of firecrackers right in the door as he closed it. It's just like bah, 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 bah. You just see the whole inside of the van like lighting up, and so yeah, I mean, it was a wild time. Nobody got hurt really. But the crazy thing was after that is for probably 4 or 5 days post our firework war, we still had some leftover stuff. And so somebody would just randomly shoot a bottle rocket in our van. Like while we were going down the road, nobody's paying attention. Somebody just light a bottle rocket and it would go flying around the van.
That's
somebody, or it was crazy, man. I mean, it was a good time, but it was crazy.
Oh,
That's perfect.
I love stories like
Yeah,
that.
they're fairly innocent. They're a lot of fun.
I seem to remember Toby telling a story about it was probably the same trip, but one of the guys from Emery driving away while you were in the city, like before a show, and he threw a smoke ball in the van
Yep.
as he drove away. So it's
Yeah,
just
Josh, our keyboard
filled
player,
with smoke.
he's a vegetarian for a long time, and he would almost never eat at the same place we ate because we all just eat whatever, So
Right.
So we would be going to some fast food place, and he's like, "Oh, I found this cool vegan restaurant down the road," and so he dropped us off at this fast food, and as we were getting out, I think Toby launched a smoke bomb in the van, and we just see like orange smoke flying, coming out all the windows of the van, and he's like coughing and and so yeah, that was the kind of stuff that we would do most of the time.
Yes, love it. Oh my gosh.
Well, hey, so what are your plans for this year? This grand year of 2017?
Well, hopefully Emery's gonna make a new record. So like I said, we've been working on demos, and I think we're gonna do, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're gonna start a crowdfund at some point in the fairly near future. And so we're gonna do that. We're gonna record over the next 4 or 5 months. Hopefully get that out later this, probably late summer, early fall. And then, so we'll do that. Like I said, I'm going to be heavily involved in, the Bad Christian kind of online retail kind of stuff, and then also BC Supply. So what I spend most of my time doing right now is just kind of learning that side of things a little bit, because I never had much experience in that. And so it'll just be a lot of time just kind of me learning, how to work, certain things within Shopify or things like that. But then also, just marketing ideas for BC Supply and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it'll mostly be that kind of stuff. I mean, I want to spend a lot of time with my family. I like traveling with them, just enjoying time, doing that kind of stuff. And, so we'll see from there. I don't have a real, long distance plan, but I know what I'm doing tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes.
Sure. Do you have a desire to do another solo album? You want to keep doing that stuff?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to think about since I'm so, it just came out.
Right.
But I definitely want to, and I would enjoy. I know Toby's doing some of this too, and we've talked about getting together and trying to kind of collaborate on some music to maybe pitch to some other types of artists and some licensing companies and things like that. So that's something I would love to do as well. It's kind of on the back burner right now, but definitely want to work in that. Maybe after the Emery album comes out, I can focus on some of that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Where's the best place for people to get your album? Where do you get the most money, basically?
I would say go to my website. It's devinsheltonmusic.com. And I mean, that's probably the best overall. I mean, you can get it at the website, has all the links to all the different things anyway, but yeah, just straight through us is probably the best.
Cool. And I saw you just got the vinyl in too, right?
I did, yeah.
Just a couple days ago.
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
It wasn't a couple weeks it came in, then I got him to send me one. So yeah.
Nice.
Right on.
Sweet.
That's a good feeling,
It is.
having the physical package.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Totally.
And then BC Supply is literally just bc.supply. Isn't that the website for it?
Yes, bc.supply, yep.
Cool. So those are the ways we can keep you from having to go back to a church job.
Yes.
By going to
That
those
is
sites.
exactly right.
Right.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, thanks so much, Devin. This is really
thank
cool.
you, Devin.
Hey, thank you
For
guys
being
for having me.
willing to
I
come
appreciate
on.
it.
And now back to Arthur. Did you ever watch that? How they'd have and now a word from us kids. Did you ever watch Arthur? Arthur the Aardvark.
Yeah, I know that. I don't remember that.
But the cartoon show. Oh yeah, in the middle there was a segment. And now a word from us kids, and then they'd go to like a elementary school, and they'd be like, "Here's a bug we learned about." And Okay, so on that note, related to kids things, I had to pull off my mic during the interview when you talked about when you made the reference to a kid's song about apples.
Why?
Because it was so fitting, but it was just like, that's so simple. Of course, that's the reference you go to, but it's just like apples. They come in a bushel, they come in a basket, and then there's like some 40-year-old guy with an acoustic guitar, and he's like, some of them are green, some of them are...
And then there's me sulking in the corner.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
Just completely rejecting kids' songs. Yeah, rightfully so.
I have good memories, fond memories of listening to 107.9 The Edge in Albuquerque.
Right.
When it was the edge of the radio band, and it is now
The
104.1.
edge of the dial. Yeah.
It's not the edge anymore. Anyway, I had my little tape recorder, and I would sit there and wait for Marilyn Manson to come on.
Ooh.
And,
So you
and
were one
record
of
the
those
beautiful people.
Devil worship kids.
Yeah. And this was in elementary school.
Jeez.
So
yeah.
I've been on the dark side as long as I can remember. So,
Hell yeah. we used to get my sisters, I guess it was mainly my sisters, at the library. We would get cassette tapes of Raffi. Are you familiar with him?
yeah.
I mean, how
I
did
think
that guy
we
have a career?
Well,
Creeper.
because he panders to stupid kids.
I mean, but child molester written all over him. I'm sure he isn't. But it's like, come on. What 40-year-old guy with a beard who looks like Shel Silverstein wants to make songs for kids and wear like a nightcap?
What did you do? Like what did you do in your life that brought you to, like, you landed on that?
Wait, say that again. What?
Like, what did he do with his life? Like, what series of events led him to be that person?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say.
It's got to be. We should have him on the podcast. Ask him what his story is. He's still alive?
I think he probably is, yeah.
Hey, Siri, is Rafi dead? Oh, I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that, is what it said.
Man, Siri's worthless.
And then
Google
my phone
Pixel
just
looks
died.
like they got something pretty cool. What was I going to say related to that? Oh, okay. Yeah, dark side, living on the dark side. I'm jumping subjects yet again.
Hey.
And I know we're at the end of our show, so I need to get out of here. But so, Andy, I used to work at Whole Foods, as you know, as a cashier.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was this very specific combo of items, like a burrito and a kombucha or something, two small items, where pretty regularly people would come through the line and get these two things, and the total would be $6.66. And this is like this was the universe aligning perfectly in this particular moment, because these two metalheads came through, like typical, the Slayer super long baggy t-shirts, like ripped up jeans, super long hair, and like that kind of gross long scraggly goatee. And they had happened to get these two items. And so I said, all right, your total is $6.66. And one guy looked at the other and he was like, the number of the beast. And Sig, I don't even know who that's by, but that's a song.
I think that's it's either Iron Maiden or Judas Priest.
Yeah, okay. I knew it had to be one of those, but it was just like, yes, thank you, Lord God, that moment happened and I got to be there for it.
But were they super deadpan about it? Like they were too cool to be excited?
No, they thought it was funny. I mean, it was kind of like a stoner laugh, like, hey, yeah. Like 666, man, yeah.
And I wish you would have just stood there and give him a blank stare.
Oh, no way. I was so happy that it had happened. Yeah. Anyway, man, we ran the gamut. Shut up, Josh. I've said that before. Don't repeat yourself.
Shut up, Josh.
I need to get some new catchphrases.
Yeah, make one up right now.
And that's the way the news goes.
That's the way the cookie goes. That's the way the fruit by the foot rolls up.
Well, it was a pleasure having Devin on.
Yes, good guy.
Brother of Blake, I believe.
Don't think so.
Yeah.
But related to the fireworks guys, we learned that.
Yes, his family owns a large firework business.
Okay. What,
Thanks,
are we
folks,
done here?
for listening
Okay.
to the number 2 and number 28 over here.
Hey kid, take my advice. You don't want to step into a big pile of shit. Your captain is drunk. Your mother's Titanic floating on the funk. So get your groove on. And maybe I am just a little fucked up. Life's just a little fucked up. Generation X, Generation Strange. I don't even shine through a window pane. So go ahead and talk shit. Talk shit about me. So go ahead, talk shit about my generation. So we don't give a fuck and we won't ever give a fuck until you give a fuck about me and my generation.